Hello again, everyone. Happy Friday Eve to you if you're watching this live, and good day to you if you're watching the replay on a different day. Today, we're talking about all things employee relations, and I have my friend Mitch here, who I'm going to allow to introduce himself because he can do it better than I can for sure. So, Mitch, can you tell everyone who you are and why employee relations matters to you?
Absolutely. So, welcome everybody. Mitch Douglas here. I have spent a number of years always in HR, except for a couple of operational roles here and there. Always an HR guy, and now I'm out on my own, working on my own place called Waterloo Human Capital Management. One of the things we focus on is employee relations. And so what is that? People think about it and they go, oh, is that when you just come in and you investigate that there's a problem between a manager and an employee? It's a lot more than that. It's really about how do you think about culture, right? How do you focus on creating, maintaining, and fostering a positive employee relationship between the employee and the organization? It's about really building that trust. So when you think about boiling it down to that, it is really simple. It's how do you change the culture? And that's where employee relations come into, because we've always got our ears and our eyes open.
Love it. I'm glad you said it and I did it. That most people think employee relations and they're like, oh, if I get a call from employee relations, my job's in jeopardy or I did something wrong. So with you saying it's about building this culture, how
Yep.
did employee relations get this bad rap?
Because far too many times in a lot of organizations, the employee relations group is seen as the ones that call up when there's a problem. So a manager calls you into your office and there's HR. It's an employee relations person. And it's all about performance improvement plans, or it's to give you a severance plan because your job was eliminated, or supposedly or allegedly you did something wrong. So those are always negative views of what employee relations really does. Yes, that is a part of it, but unfortunately, employee relations in a lot of companies doesn't get the chance to do the other things. It's find out what's going on, listen to people. How do we make sure that we are doing the right activities? How do we handle engagement? How do we focus on engaging our workforce? It doesn't have to be that it's always a negative interaction. So if the right CHRO and the right CEO and leadership team get there's a couple of aspects to it, and it's communication. It's really about letting your employee relations team communicate, not just when you have to do the harder stuff, but on the fun stuff to find out what's going well in the workplace, what could be changed, how do we work with a different culture. It's really the eyes and the ears of the organization.
Perfect. Well, I'd like to dive a little bit deeper about how to do employee relations the right way. As you said, you've been at this for a long time, and in your organization, you do a lot of this work. So, what would you recommend to the listeners out here right now? Who are like, you know what? I want to change how employee relations are viewed, and I want to give them a chance to communicate and operate the way they feel is best for our organizational culture. What would you say to that, Mitch?
I'll tell you, education is the key, right? So when you think of human resources and somebody says they're in talent acquisition, it's pretty easy, right? You know what they do? They go out and they look for talent. When you talk about benefits, what do those guys do? They find us the right benefits and try to keep us happy by keeping the premium increases down lower. You talk about compensation, what do those folks do? They're the ones that set the market rates. They tell us what we can pay for a particular role. They help us when we want to go out to the market. But when people ask about employee relations, they really don't know what it means. So when I say it's about education, it's going out and making sure people that understand what really is HR. What do we do? So let's take ER, employee relations. So what would be the core purpose? The core purpose of the function, if we communicate it right, says we want to help build trust. So it's a two-way street. There's going to be times when you're going to want to come in to employee relations and say, look, I need just some guidance. I want you and I to have a decent conversation, but can you just keep it between the two of us? As an employee relations person, if I sit with an employee and they want to talk to me about their manager or a coworker, as long as they're not doing something that's illegal or it's against policy, my job as an ER person is to listen. If they want advice, I'll give advice. The worst thing that I can do as an HR professional is tell somebody else I had the conversation. Let the manager know or the other employee know. Confidentiality and trust are the most important things you need to have as an employee relations expert. So the purpose, right? You want to build that trust. And how do you do it? You keep your mouth shut when you say you are. And you're honest when you say, if this at all veers into a part where it's talking about illegal activity, you have to be open and honest and say, look, I can't withhold this. I'm an officer of the company. So we improve that communication so that we're clear with employees about what we do. We help to resolve conflicts. And it doesn't mean that it's all about performance or poor behavior. It could be a conflict as simple as you and I are doing similar roles, but you have some additional tasks. I have less. What if I start tripping over what you're doing and I cause a problem with you? Let's just
Mhm.
resolve the conflict. Let's make sure that we are compliant so that we've got the right people who we've done their background checks. We make sure that we're holding people to ethical standards. And as an ER person, it is my job. So I should make sure that the leadership team knows when we've got a problem, meaning somebody's doing something that's against our policy. Let's say they're abusing someone else, and that could be verbal or it could be physical. Or maybe we just have somebody who's in the organization that says some really inappropriate jokes and no one wants to say anything. And people start to think that's the culture. No, I got to make sure that we're compliant. I got to let somebody know that that stuff has to stop
Mm.
so that you see that ER is not just out to quote unquote get you. We want to enhance the dynamic between the organization and the employees.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that, Mitch. So there's a couple of things that come up often when I speak to employees and other HR professionals when it comes to employee relations, and they always talk about this the perception. The perception
Yeah.
is the employee's reality, and the employees automatically just think like I can't share when something's going on because I just feel like the employee relations person is going to share it anyway, even if they say it's confidential. They're going to share it anyway, and I'm going to get in trouble for it. So, how does the employee relations professional kind of rebuild that trust? Because I feel like it's ironic that the whole plight is to build trust, and then the trust has been eroded so much that now employee relations, who's there to build trust, has to build their
Yeah.
own trust. So, how do they do that with employees?
To me, it's simple. I'm going to tell you, and you're going to say, uh huh. I'm going to say to you, you can trust me.
Mm-hmm.
My words don't mean anything to you, do they? I
Right.
could, I could, I could have a brown bag lunch and I could present all the things about what I'm going to do. How am I going to build your trust? How am I going to build your confidence that you can come to me and I won't tell you anybody else? You're not going to do anything. Nothing's going to change until you see that I'm held accountable. If employee X comes to me and says that, they're having difficulty with their manager because that manager isn't giving them the guidance or helping to develop them. What do I do, Mitch? How do I handle this? And I don't want you to get anybody else involved. That's where the problem lies. If I do say anything, anything I say after that, you're always going to be suspect.
Mm-hmm.
So, as an HR organization, we have to hold our employee relations team, just like we do our compensation team and our talent acquisition team, to a higher standard than we would anybody else because it is about trust and it is about confidence. We need to make sure that if there are those types of leaks, that we get back to the employee and we say, we apologize, we've addressed it, and if you do need help going forward, and you don't want to speak to Mitch and you want to talk to, let's say, Marie, we'll send you over to talk to Marie, because we need to rebuild that trust.
Mm.
And it's really about actions more than it is about words.
Gotcha. So when you in your work, is there like when you come in and you help organizations kind of rebuild that trust, so to speak, and do that employee relations work, what's the first thing you look for to see where the root cause of their issues lie?
There's a lot of ways that you can find that. And you can go to exit interviews. So if you're doing those, it's a great source of information to tell you what's happened and why people left. If your company does annual employee surveys, another phenomenal area to work on. You've got data, so now you can look at it. So wherever you can find actual data, you can then start to effectuate change. The same can be held is you could, as long as there is some trust with someone, you can have a group meeting and you can start to ask particular questions and you can make it a safe place. You can do things one-on-one if you needed to. So it really starts with getting the data that you can and where does it lead you to? Could simply be that there is a number of employees that feel that you do not apply the performance appraisal process or the review process or any of our initiatives equally, right? And now I got a problem. So
Mhm.
I think it really boils simply back down to that. You got to
Gotcha.
have data.
And I like that you mentioned that there's different levels that you're going to collect that data from. So it's not just like leadership saying, oh, we see this thing, but you're actually going to the source of the people and asking what's really going on. And I feel like that's where a lot of organizations miss. So thank you
They
for
do.
that.
They do. What happens is, I'll give you a great example. So during the course of my career, I've met with a number of leaders that will tell me, you know what? I don't know why people are leaving, but I think it's because they're not paid well. That's what they're telling me. They're not
Mhm.
being paid, and I know we're not paying our people well. So what do I do? I'm not going to go with that assumption because when I assume, then I've made you out of
Yeah,
you and me, right? It's not the way to
absolutely.
go. Many times I start having those conversations and we talk about things like, all right, how does your organization look like? Is it a flat organization? Is there you and then 10 people underneath you? Whoa, we got an issue there, right? So if you are one of those 10, you don't see any forward mobility. You don't see any opportunity. Okay. That could be one of the issues. Maybe the other issue is we start to have conversations and I say, okay, how often do you have meetings with your teams? Well, I don't know. Once a month, maybe. Ask your team, how often do they want to see you? How often do they need guidance? So it's really about asking questions. That's incumbent upon any HR professional because what the manager thinks is the issue isn't always the case. And if you
Usually
took
isn't.
that, yeah, it's not. And as I said, that's why data is so critical in asking questions. That's what you got to be a good HR person. You need to like to ask questions and listen.
Absolutely. Curiosity is important. So, with that being said about curiosity, I am curious what you think the future of employee relations will look like. We hear a lot of talk about HR and tech, and some organizations are even combining their IT department with HR. So, what are you seeing from your experience as the future of employee relations?
I'll say this: there's a component of employee relations that AI can help, but it's not going to replace because there are certain components that you can certainly add and make the processes easier. When you talk about performance management, that's something employee relations and HR works on. You can certainly do a real good job of being able to take employee data that might sit in your HRIS system, job descriptions, any engagement survey feedback that's relevant. Let's say you do a 360 feedback process on folks. And you can use AI to merge all of that together. And you could ask that, what would be a good development plan? And when I say development plan, I don't mean a negative. I mean, what is it that they've been up to this past year? What are some of the metrics that you've evaluated them against? Now let's put it into a plan so that they can be even more successful next year. And you can help them set their goals. So I'll tell you that AI is really a great tool to be used. Why? It can be used for another reason. So an employee may not be the best in communication. Let's say that's part of the issue was identified, that they come across as being a little bit too harsh. They've got a nasty tone to it. Guess what? You go into AI and you type your memo, your email, plot it into an AI, whatever you like, and ask it to have a more friendly tone or to improve it. Then you can look at that and you can see the differences between what you started with and what the final product is. And that might help you understand how to write better. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. You're going to see AI come in the way of handling some of the most basic questions. I mean, it's already out there, chatbots, right? So if I want to go in, I do a quick chatbot on, can you tell me what my time off is? AI can then bring in and say, okay, Mitch has 3 weeks. Mitch has accrued X number of weeks. So that chatbot answers my specific question. That's
Mhm.
how HR will become more effective. Because then we're not having somebody sit on the phone and answer those questions. And the employee doesn't have to wait on someone to answer the phone.
Absolutely. And with the advent, or not even advent, with the prevalence of tech permeating through all these different organizations, especially when it comes to HR, what do you see as the key traits for, let's just say, successful employee relations professionals?
I think the successful employee relations person will do this. I love AI because I can throw in a lot of information and I can ask it to spit out a particular type of an initiative. So let's do this. Let's say here's the organization that does a great job at exit interviews, and you can separate that by job level or by job title. The organization also does a wonderful job on an annual basis of doing an engagement survey. Got more information. I can go into the HRIS system and I can pull out the number of promotions and where are the promotions predominantly happening in the organization. I can then go back into the organization and I can see how many people were successful against their KPIs. So I've got all this data now. I can throw that into AI, right? And now that can be used to help employee relations because now you could say, all right, what we're noticing with all of this data that's out there, when I use an AI like a Gemini, a Chat GPT, and there's so many different ones, they can analyze that data and they can spit back and say that if you've given it the right information, employees between years 1 and 3 are not getting the type of development they need. Because why? We pulled out of HRIS who attended training classes, who went to different educational opportunities, who got a new degree or a certificate. So you can be able to, as long as you're getting all the data, you can put that into AI and it can do an analysis quicker than anybody could do in the past. Because
Right.
before you were taking different sheets of paper, right? And you're trying to grab the data and let's say you input it into Excel. We've made that process easier if we do it right.
Yeah, so it's really about improving efficiencies and in pattern recognition. It sounds like so. No, thank you for that. I think that's a great idea to leverage what's accessible to you as far as tools and resources to kind of augment what you
Yeah.
already do. We do have a request from the audience, from the viewers here. They said they look forward to learning how to handle tricky employee situations. So we have about a few more minutes left
Okay.
here. You want to talk about like how to go about handling those tricky situations that employee relations professionals seemingly deal with on a daily, especially now in this climate?
Here's the hard part is there are a lot of cases that are just ones where you're an HR person you want to run from. Those are the situations where you really need to think first before you act. Case in point, you may have two individuals working side by side in a cubicle, and one is a loud person and the other is a quiet person. Maybe one is got you know headphones on all the time to try to block that, but they don't like it. Maybe you have another issue that could be an allegation of harassment or of discrimination. You you have to be willing to go into the situation as an HR professional with your eyes wide open without making any assumptions, even if someone has a reputation. Let's say in the past this person was a hothead
Mm-hmm.
and would respond, "I'm sorry, if you don't like how loud I'm talking, go find somewhere else to work." History doesn't always repeat itself. Generally, it does, but it doesn't always do that. So, as an HR professional, you have to make sure that what you do is you know the parties involved, and that what you clearly do is you listen, you ask questions, and you listen, and come up with solutions that make sense. Not every scenario is going to be the same. So, I will always say that the best HR person will listen more than they talk.
I agree. I think we all should do that, right? Active listening,
Yeah,
key thread, and what. With that being said, before we conclude, what are some types of trainings or resources can employee resource professionals or employee relations professionals kind of seek out to ensure that they're prepared for those difficult conversations and actions that need to be taken?
I will tell you one of the things that is always, always has to be a part of who you are is a desire to learn
Mm-hmm.
and a desire to know that you're not always going to get it right. So if I've gone in and I came to a conclusion about a particular situation that I'm the ER expert on, and I run it by my manager, if that manager says, no, you shouldn't do it because I wouldn't respond that way. Why? Because here's what happened to me when I did that. The good HR person will listen and take that advice. And it's really incumbent upon an ER person to do like everyone else is to stay abreast of the latest and the greatest in laws, regulations,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's state, local, or federal, because you don't want to be able to provide advice that's incorrect or outdated. That is another killer to confidence. If I tell you, oh, you need to be back on a particular date after a particular leave, but what if the state made a change and I misguided you? And now I've unleashed some anger in you because you just found out that I didn't know what I was doing. So that's what I say is eyes and ears at all times and continuously ask and learn and stay abreast of the legal changes.
Yeah, no, that's definitely key. Regulations and anything that is required for compliance is for sure. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom, Mitch.
Thank you.
How can the people connect with you?
Very simple. You can find me on LinkedIn, Mitch Douglas. You can find me with that little lion in the logo, Waterloo Human Capital Management. You can reach me at Mitchell at Waterloo H is human, C is in capital, M is in management.com. I'm happy to help out with any kind of questions or any support you guys may need. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, pleasure is all mine. Thank you for everyone who has tuned in. Please continue to drop your questions. YouTube is going crazy right now, so I'll go and I'll answer all of those YouTube requests and any other channel, LinkedIn, Facebook. I got you covered as well. Please connect with with Mitch. And if you have any questions for me, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Jevon Wooden, you'll see a little light bulb. And go over to my YouTube channel, search my name, Jevon Wooden, and we are covering everything when it comes to leading with empathy in your life and business. We'll talk to you
And
soon.
Javon, you're right. You're right. Thank you.
I appreciate
I
you, man.
love your stuff, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to everyone else. And remember, keep ascending.